Looks like Russ, he's got his notification bell going for the Comic Core channel. We are going live here early. This is the List show. We're supposed to be on in about an hour, but due to some scheduling things going on with the Story Comic Core, you're getting us now. And the Story Comic Core is going to be following us for a change. So we can go as long as we want. Alec is not getting in this house, not as long as I'm sitting here. And I'm joined by Mr. Who Comics and Movies. Russell, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself? How about everybody in the chat who's going to join us? It's going to be fun. It was a great weekend for me. So I'm happy to kind of wind down and get back to normal. So yes,
yeah, nice 3-day weekend, right?
White Will, you're gonna have to stay on the boat tonight until we get tired.
Exactly. Yeah, we were supposed to be on a little later. Alec got stuck at work, so we decided to swap with him so that you don't miss out. Audience who was perhaps waiting for the Story Comic Core, you'll get them in about an hour's time. They'll be coming on here. We've already got a few people in the chat. Comics NYC is here, and Mr. Perry Comics. Because we're going on a little earlier, it threw off a little bit of some of our panel. So if there's anybody in the audience that would like to come on and talk about their list or how they hunt or their hunting strategies, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. I'll try to drop you the link. And of course, anybody in the Comic Core, I dropped the link in there, so some of them might be popping in or out. I'm hoping we can get Tony Sanders. We're about 30 minutes earlier than we had planned, so hopefully Tony can join us for the second half and help me keep Alec out of the room for as long as we possibly can.
You got Cat Wren jumped in the chat. She's in the chat.
Hello, Miss Cat Wren. Nice to have you here.
White Whale's in the chat. Somebody's supposed to be live right now. I don't know, man.
You're out, Alec. This is my channel now. You don't get to come and stay anymore. I've got the password. I got the power.
DS Comics, what's going on? Oh,
Chris
man.
Barrett's in here. I'll tell you, Chris Barrett, if you guys don't know, is one of the most supportive guys in YouTube. I feel like he beats me to almost every chat for almost every live stream that I go to. The guy is a beast and a huge, awesome part of this community. So shout out Chris Barrett. Comic Head's in there too. How's it going, man?
The Macho Head.
Yeah, Macho Head is here. I've got my crown somewhere. I could. King Joffrey's always in the house.
I got a question before we get started.
Do it.
Is that a comic slab behind you, like the stand slab, the Galactus? It's like a stand.
This one. Yes.
Those things are pretty. I've seen somebody who has one. They're pretty awesome. I just had to point that out.
Comic Talks. And a couple of the other guys who do auctions on Instagram have a couple of these wood slabs going in here. G-Pad thinks
he popped in and popped out.
Just messing with us. But so it's like they can do custom ones with like the name of your channel or whatever. So Comic Talks has his name on it. There's something about this Silver Surfer one I just freaking dug.
That's why I popped in my when I saw it. A buddy of mine has it who we just talking to Hangouts, and I mean a good price, $20 shipped, I think, huh?
Yeah, and I actually bought one, and with my last auction I did, which I haven't done one for a while, but the last one I did, I used some of that money and I bought one for Comic Head 84 and had it sent to him so that he doesn't spill his slabs anymore.
He needs a Macho Head one.
I did a
pink
Joker one. It had all the ha-ha-ha-has in all the different fonts.
Since they do custom ones, they need their wrestling personas ones.
Yeah, maybe have them do some kind of Macho Head, the sunglasses.
Yep. And then JD have like Flair have the hair.
TJ Watson, thank you for joining us. He's shouting out Chris Barrett too. You can definitely do your list in the chat. So this is a show. If you haven't seen our show before, this is the third episode, I think. And we're really spending some time discussing the how and whys of collecting and hunting. Most of that falls back on what strategies and what tools we use to come up with a plan for the books that we're going after. And usually that amounts to some kind of a list, whether it's handwritten, whether it's all mental, or whether you've got some actual typed form. And the first episode we did was really long, but I thought it was phenomenally informative. And I learned a lot of cool things. Our whole panel was here, and everybody kind of went through the tools they used. Last time we had a slightly smaller panel, and we missed out on Mr. Hudak Comics and Movies. I'm super pumped that he and he and Tony can join us this time if Tony gets in here. So there were some questions we talked about last time as far as what kind of collector are you? What kinds of things do you collect? And people went through a little bit of like the runs. If they're a run collector, what kind of runs they're collecting? Is there a run for you, Russell, that's like the run that you're really working on?
The one run that I'm really working on, and I'm not trying to do any other runs until I do that, complete that run, is the Ninja Turtles Volume 1 run. And that includes a few second prints that I'm trying to get out of that run. And I want to do, the whole run, first prints, and then the few second prints before I even jump into another run, because I've noticed, and a lot of people can say the same thing. It's like if you're not focused on one thing, you'll get sidetracked. You go over here, go over there, and then you be like, man, I had a couple $100 and I spent it on this. I could have bought the Grail book I wanted. Or I could have bought these 20 books in the run I wanted. You miss out on stuff when you don't stay too focused on certain things. So that's why I'm trying to concentrate on like one run, and then I'll decide what I want to work on next.
Yeah, and a good friend of mine, JP Budget Collecting, has had a lot of great discussions on his channel. In fact, he had one just earlier today with the same kind of topic of what is my list? How do I pare it down and keep myself focused? He felt like his list was far too big and too broad, and that he really needed to narrow it to a couple of bigger books so that he knew that he wasn't trying to get 6 big books, but really just a couple that he was really going to zero in on, and that made a difference in his collecting. So for you, that's that one. Like for me, Uncanny X-Men has always been that run for me. That Claremont 94 through into the 300s. That's always been my like epic goal. But at the same time, I'm always looking for the occasional thing that pops up on the radar, because I will say some of the bigger books I've purchased have been sort of off the cuff. Like I had an opportunity and it's like, do you take it? Have you had a book that was like just sort of fell in your lap and you're like, I got to go after this?
Not. I'm hard to think because I get so many books and try to get the certain books I really want. That's why I try to stay focused on that Ninja Turtles run. But like besides, like I get bigger books I'm not trying to get as far as like the Silver Age keys, like JP Code Budget Collects. Like I try to keep that list too kind of small. But what I do is kind of expand on it as well, because you don't want to pass up a deal on a book when it's like 20% off of fair market value. That's and if that's on my list for as like alternatives, then I'm gonna pick it up because it was gonna make the first list anyway.
Right.
So I try to keep a list, but I'm not trying to keep like 100 books. So it's like I try to minimize like maybe 1 through 5 that big books I'm trying to get. And then I'll have like a bench or whatever you want to call it, or something. That they'll move up after I get one of those 5. And but if I see one of the ones that not on the top 5, but it's like I said, it's like 10-20% off, I'm gonna definitely get it because that's the ones I want anyway. It's just if I have priority for other ones, but I'm not gonna pass up the other ones.
Yeah, for me that came up really big at Christmas, or I should say in the months leading up to Christmas, because a friend of mine was selling a huge part of his collection, and there were a lot of books in there that I knew were valuable, but weren't necessarily books on my list. But the more I could bundle together, the bigger the discount he gave me, to the point where we were almost at like a third of market cost was taken off. So I was paying 2/3. And I was like, okay, I don't necessarily need. At the time, it was like first BetaRay Bill, and I am not a Thor fan, but I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. I think this could go up. And now I've got this book, and it's like that book will definitely become a trade for me for later, right?
Yeah.
That book easily become okay. I'm looking for my, whatever book, and this, if I want my, let's say, Uncanny 101, that's now a possibility. I could use that as a trading in a later on, even though that's not a book. That was never a grail for me, BetaRay Bill.
No, and it is not for me, and I end up getting that book too in a bundle of a whole bunch of other books. Because I'm like, I do that as well, because you can use those books as bartering tools to get other books. Just like all of a sudden BetaRay Bill is so popular, so hot now. I think I didn't really pay $70 because that's what he had sticker. But when you add up all the other books, it probably ended up being like $50 I paid for it.
Right.
I ended up getting it pressed and graded. I only got probably, I would say, $90 into the book, but now the book's worth $250. So I can move.
What did you end up getting for that grade?
A 9.4. It was a newsstand. Yeah, it was a newsstand copy, which I was
a newsstand.
I was hoping for a 9.4, 9.6. It's hard with those white covers, so you don't know how much what it's going to look like. Because I've gotten a book a 9.8, and I said that's not going to be a 9.8, a white cover, and it came back a 9.8. So you never know how they're going to grade it. But I was happy. I was stoked with it.
And that was the thing too for me. Like I don't usually buy slab books. I want to say I've only purchased 3 or 4 in my life. And that one was a slab too. And I was like, well, that's going to up the cost. And do I really want this book? Is it almost like, what's the value in it? If I had been able to look ahead to now with that book spiking like crazy, then I'd be able to say, oh yeah, it was a good decision. But at the time I was like, this is not on my list. It's not a book that I'm looking for. It's slabbed. I don't even collect slab books. What am I doing with this?
That's why you got to think of beyond of your list when you get stuff like that. If you don't collect them, you don't want them. Because if you got a specific list, it might not make your list, but you got to think about what could I use this for on my list, And I think
and that's what it boiled down to for me was there was a stack of books that he was selling that I was like, yes, I value these because I value that character, I value that story, and then there was a stack that was like, I can do something with these someday. There was the first Reverse Flash, and I'm like, I don't read Flash, but I know that this is a valuable Silver Age key. I know that it's got a Joe Giella signature on it, and I might be able to trade with that someday. But on the other side, I was like, I really want this Dark Side. It was like, that's a slab. I don't buy slabs, but it's signed by Neil Adams, remarked by Neil Adams. Like, that is amazing. I love Dark Side. I love that whole apocalypse world. Like, that I could buy. I want that. But these other ones, if it's part of the bundle, makes it worth it. Maybe.
It to me, it always makes it worth it. I mean, I did I don't collect DC really at all. Only certain things that kind of catches my eye for DC, certain characters, certain things, but it's very limited. So I'm not gonna. I always will get stuff that I know is pretty hot. If it looks like a high grade, or it's not hot yet, or if it still looks like a high grade, I'll pick it up. Like I picked up Batman 635 in that run with the Thor.
Right.
That one ended up coming back a 9.8. So yeah, so I was like, okay, I hit the jackpot with those two.
Take it.
So I didn't feel so bad after I got those back from grading.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Now I haven't done the grading side, so for me, that's like a whole door that I haven't really walked through yet because I always feel like that's money away from my collection. How long have you been putting money into slabbing?
For the last 5 years at least. Because we're in 2019. Well, I'll say 2016. So maybe like last 3 years, I've really been getting into it more. Especially stuff that I'm keeping. If it's stuff I'm going to keep, I'd rather preserve it. Something happens to me, it's easy for my wife to find. All right, he has this.
To get fair market value for it.
It's easy to look up and get money for it. Just in case. But especially if it's a book I'm keeping. If it's a book I'm not keeping, then it weighs out. If I grade it, it's because I'm going to sell it or trade it to get something I really want. That depends on the value on it. Just like that Batman book, I was like, I know it's worth more graded. So, the book by itself is like $40 book.
Exactly. And there's some that I know for me, like if I want to trade or sell those, the value goes up. But also I've got a handful that I want to do that whole signature verification that CBCS is doing, just because some of the writers and artists are not alive. So I can't ever make that a yellow label in any way, right? So this would be the best avenue left, in my opinion. But I know TJ is going to disagree with me. He's like, don't fear the green label guy.
Well, TJ is, and Tony Sanders. He's big on those green labels too. Like,
Yeah,
and
and I respect that totally. I mean, I don't have a problem with the green label, but I want at least for a signature like like if it's a Neil Adams or whatever, a big name. I want like I don't know. I feel like I want a little bit of evidence, even though it's not science. It's definitely not a science, but whatever.
And that's one thing I wish CGC would get on board with. I mean, especially if somebody dies. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, how do you do a Kirby signature?
Yeah. So
at this point.
So it's something that I think they need to fix their side on. Like everybody has their niche they need to work on. CBCS is 100% on that signature verification, and it'll help for your collection. The CGC just needs to get on that. If they got on the board with that, I can see it'd be hard for CBCS to,
they'll have all the market cornered for sure. Not that they don't pretty much now, but there's a lot of cool people in the chat I haven't gotten around to yet. Biggie Shack jumped in. Biggie Shack has dropped some hysterically awesome videos today, throwing down some gauntlets in the wrestling world. Joe Ryan Comics, watch out. Chad 90 miles from comics. It's all happening. Very entertaining. Robert Galvin is in the chat. You are an awesome guy. He's had some great live streams recently. Really awesome. Let's see who else have we caught. Who else do we catch net here besides that white whale who keeps talking? John says, you and I
Caleb,
together, see who can get the best deal on a 101. Hey, I am down for that challenge. Then we both have to send them off to be graded, and who gets the higher grade? Is it a higher? How do you know who got? I guess the better deal.
That actually could be a good little, I guess, a good little show or something. You could if two people are after the same book, you can have a little competition. It's like, all right, we're gonna get if you're at a con, it's easier, but if you're not, you just have to do it at your certain times, and y'all get the same book.
Have to wait
have a little bet.
Movie to bomb.
Yeah, he's like. Oh yeah, it's gonna bomb, but it's gonna lose to Life of Pets, The Secret Life of Pets 2. That's gonna be bad.
We got Stephen Oates in here. We got Joe 47771. Let's see, Bear Island. I said hello to you. Seawood. Rob Wurst is in here. I'm sorry, I'm so behind the chat here, just trying to catch up. Jeff Comic 813, aggressively relaxing. Let's see. Somebody said Bear Island says you'd pay the same amount. If CGC did that, it'd be real trouble. Will CGC be relevant? They're asking. Ooh, that's a great question. Rob Wurst is saying, do you think CGC, CBS, any of these companies are going to still be, what is the word he used? Relevant in 10 or 20 years? Obviously, this is a very new industry, right? The slabbing industry. Do you see them continuing to be valuable going forward?
Yeah, because even if let's say the market crashed on comics, like the card, like basketball cards, baseball cards, and stuff. If the market crashed like those did, you still have that Michael Jordan card that's worth money when it's graded.
Great point.
Kobe Bryant, all these rookies, these big time rookie card, Mickey Mantle. So if you got a graded AF-15. It's still going to be worth it because it's graded. It doesn't matter if, those companies are not there anymore or something like that. You know what it was at that time. It's not, messed with, restored, cut, or like all that stuff. So I think they still be relevant because they're, people want like that assurance. People like that assurance. Yeah. So just like coins, all that other stuff, they'll still be relevant. Now, of all three of the major players will be irrelevant? I don't think so. But I can see CGC and CBCS still being there. I don't know how much longer PGX can lie around. I'm not trying to knock them or anything.
Yeah.
But I just don't know how long they can last.
But that's I think that's that issue of competition between companies, like who can stay relevant in that way. But I think the question Rob's asking seems more like, will slabbing be relevant going forward?
Oh yeah. I think
you're right. On an investment side, it's hard to get away from that, especially to preserve. You talk about books, platinum age, atomic age, golden age.
Silver age now.
One way to guarantee the book will not deteriorate at the same speed, right?
Yeah, I mean. And you got to think. I always tell people this: 84 was 35 years ago. So you got books that came out 84 that are 35 years old. So it's like,
Yeah.
you got it gets to a point, paper deteriorates, breaks down. So this will just slow down the process, so I think they'll still be relevant. It's just like, like the coin market and all those other things. I don't think they're
Totally.
going, yeah.
Now, I want to jump over to this other side of the coin for as far as making a list, making a plan. We talked a little bit about when you go off book, right? You know, this has happened to me a lot in the last year, being a part of this community, seeing these different books being purchased. And I walk into my LCS, and I'm really close with my LCS owner. And if he bought a new collection, he'll have it waiting for me so that I can look through it. I end up finding a lot of books that I know are valuable that aren't on my list, and I can have first crack at them. And that's it's a double-edged sword, right? It cuts the wallet as much as it helps the collection. Have you ever had that moment where you're just like, you know what, I have to really think about throwing this in the ring?
Yeah. I would say I have that all the time. Every time I'm getting something, I have that. And I try to run the numbers because I like math and I like doing numbers and stuff. So I try to think about, work it out, how much it's going to cost to get it pressed, how much it's going to cost to get it graded, especially if it's a book, I'm going to move to for another book.
Right.
I'll work out everything. And if it's not cost effective, then I don't get it. But 9 times out of 10, it is cost effective because, like I tell a lot of guys because we talk in these hangouts off air, and I tell them, like, when I go to buy stuff, I try to buy at least 10 books. Like, it could be $10-$20 books, or it could be $100 book and a whole bunch of $10 books. But I try to buy at least 10. So, when they see the $100 book, but they see me with a stack of other ones, they be like, all right, they're not going to be like, oh, $200. That's how much. They're going to be like, oh, what about $150? And be like, all right. So I'm basically getting this book and the other, 5 books for free, and not knowing that, maybe 2 of the books are like, I did that with Watchmen 1. I ended up getting like 5 Watchmen 1s. And if people don't know about Watchmen 1, 9/8 are like $500.
And that book has obviously maintained a significant value since its first creation.
Yeah, and the reason being with that book being so valuable graded wise is because it's hard to get a 9/8 in that book. You can get, and it's not as easy as a 9/6. 9/6 are more plentiful than 9/8, but yeah, you'll see more 9/4s and stuff because of how that black back cover.
Yeah, I know that they were talking in there about square bound books as well. Buying them raw versus slab, the slabbing protecting a square bound book, which I know that the giant size and some of those giants, king size Avengers and things have that.
Yeah, so I get off the cuff all the time, but I got to make sure it's cost effective to do it. I'm not gonna be like, all right, let me get this. Trying to think of something like Demon #1 or something, and I know it's not near mint, or looking like like it's a rough copy, it's falling apart. I'm not gonna just buy that, just because to have it. I'm be like, all right, it has to meet my criteria.
Last year it might have been around this time or into July, maybe even, like, I had the chance to get 2 of the Edge of Spider-Verse first Spider-Gwens. The first prints fell in my lap, and it was like, okay, the person had to get rid of them for whatever reason. They were giving me a decent price, but at the same time, I was like, this is expensive. I'm not a huge fan of the character. I like the character. I think she's interesting. This was obviously before the animated film. It was another moment where I was like, I'm going to rely on the hopeful, like this movie and other things to make this work. And it was so amazing because obviously I sold one and it covered the cost of both at that point.
Yeah.
The cost increased enough that made it effective. Now, the other side of the coin is when you buy it and you have a fail.
Yeah.
And I have had that. Now, the one that I think of most, the very first slab I bought was a Tales to Astonish. It was the 3rd appearance of the Wasp. It was an older book, but I bought it thinking, hey, it's a slab. The Wasp, they haven't even made a Wasp in a movie yet. This is a great buy. I overpaid. It was an older slab, so it's already starting to now separate the slab. Yeah. And it's not even like that character has been spiking, even though they've made now an Ant-Man and the Wasp movie.
Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, and she was in Endgame.
Right. Only the first appearance has spiked. This, what I have is like third appearance. Nobody gives a crap about this book. It was just a spur of the moment, like, hey, a slab. I like the Wasp. I think she's a great character. I'm going to do this.
Yeah. And
it was like running into a brick wall. I will never get my money out of this book.
I did something similar. I said when I was working on my list. This was on my list.
G-Pop's in the house. How you doing, man? Oh, he's muted. Hey, you okay?
Yeah. No, I had to set up. When I hopped on first, you guys, I was like, I don't even got a coffee. I just woke up. So I had to go get a coffee and get freshed up.
I'll let Who Dat answer that question, and then we'll get to you in a sec.
All right.
He was talking about a buy fail.
Yeah. Well, it was actually a trade fail. It's this is the one that and that's why I've learned to I learned how to grade better. I've learned to use my resources, which is comic people I talk to, all fairs.
Did he freeze up on us there?
Am I? Hello.
You're good.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It might have been my side. Sorry.
But I try to use. I've learned, like I said, from my first instance. So I get all of the information I try to get before I make a decision now. But beforehand, I went to a convention. I had a Hulk 181. It might have been my second one. Because I had 2 or 3 of them at the time. Not knowing that Hulk 181 is going to do what they're doing now. But I was like, all right, I want to trade it for this raw copy of Avengers 4. Great book, not a bad book, but it was a raw book, and mine was graded, I want to say like a 7.0 or something like that, of Hulk 181. And the Avengers book came back only a 5.5.
Oh.
So that's why I said I had to learn like my grading, hotness and certain books and stuff like that. And that one hurt. And I think about that one all the time, and I'm like, all right, I definitely need to learn how to grade better, know about what water stains can take off.
Did you get rid of the book right away, or do you still have it?
No, I end up trading it the next year, and I don't even remember what I traded for. So I guess that I really just got rid of it, just get rid of it, because I don't remember what I got for it.
Well, every time I pull that slab out, it's like. It scratches my brain. Like I feel like I need to get rid of this thing. At some point, I just need to separate from it. Maybe I'll do it as a giveaway. Somebody will get an early Ant-Man and the Wasp and be like super pumped on it. And I will be free of this burden of I wasted a lot of money.
Yeah, that was my worst one, I would say. Because those books are not, a 7.0 and a 5.5, I think the price is not even close. But I had a great win, but, I don't know if we're going to talk about that later, but I did have a great win, I think, the next year at that convention. So it works out. It goes hand in hand once you learn and, take the time.
Oh, Robert, sorry, I was just trying to watch the chat there a little bit. Oops, sorry. Sorry, did I mess up there, GPAP? I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying my address is there in the chat. If you just want to send that book my way, there's no problem.
Oh, there you go.
I'm good. I can take it. I'll give it a good home. I'm the master of low grades, better than no grades. So
that is me too. I don't grade anything.
Slabbing to me is always interesting. At first, anybody who knows me from back in the day, I was pretty anti-slabbing, not because I didn't agree with the intrinsic value that it starts doubling and tripling when you get a certified grade. I get it. I get the model that they're pushing, but to me, I trust my grading. I've been grading for a while, and if you're not entirely comfortable grading, the best thing you can do for yourself as a collector is just get out there and practice. Break out your entire collection, grade the whole thing. You got the time, do it. And you say, well, I don't have time to grade 10,000 books. But if you take the time and start practicing it, and if you do have slabs, use that as a reference guide. You don't have to go crazy with it.
And most of the Overstreet has like little breakdowns of different grades and what comprises this level versus that level. I know I haven't studied that enough, but that's similar, right?
One of the best things you can have is just a little sticky notepad. That's it. And take your book out in front of you and literally just write down every detail that you can find, a flaw that you can find. And you can come up with a price bracket pretty quickly. You're like, all right, well, it doesn't fall into 8 or better. Boom, gone. And it's not a 3 or less. Boom, that's gone. So now I'm working in a really small bracket. And based on a list of little details that I wrote down, 15 non-color breaking spine ticks, 2 color breaking spine ticks, a small, less than 1/8 inch of a dog ear, whatever, write all that down. Get familiar with what defects to look for. And then you've got the defects right in your hand. And then you just match it up to either Overstreet Price Guide or even CGC, like go to the forums, or even CGC website itself. Now they have different grading standards. Overstreet, I think CGC have their own aside from Overstreet. Overstreet's pretty strict.
Overstreet's pretty strict. CGC's has their own, and I think CBCS is stricter than CGC, but they all don't follow Overstreet.
But while I for a long time had a problem with the intrinsic value that was put on slabbing, I was like, I'm not paying a 9.8 value. I know what a 9.8 is. I don't need you to do that for me. I'm not going to pay for that. I'll pay you the raw 9.8, and if you want, I'll cover your slabbing fees. I'm not paying 3 times the value because I know it's a 9.8. I know it's a 9.8 anyway. I trust my grade. So, but in the market that it is now, it's a commodity unto itself, aside from collecting, and we very much tied it and we're fed it as it's part of the collection. I know a lot of people who got into collecting and they view it as this is part of collecting. It's not. This is part of investment. That's what that is.
That's a good way to say it.
Right? There's a strong purpose to all comic book investors slab, not all comic collectors slab. So if you want to do it for investment purposes, totally makes sense. You want to do it for signature verification, another good reason. You want to do it for preservation, another great reason. So there is a lot of good reasons for a comic collector to do it. But you got to remember, what is CGC's selling point? They're like, well, why would we have somebody do this? Rather than convince you and say, we love comics, and you know what, I'm going to train you like an ETA Nick video. And by the way, he has a string of tutorials. If anybody is struggling with grading or wants some step-by-step, check out ETA Nick's playlist of grading tutorials. It's massively helpful. But I just
sorry. Do you?
Oh no, go ahead.
When you're hunting, do you make lists? Do you plan so that you're looking for not necessarily grades, but looking for a certain quality of a book at a certain price? Do you what kind of planning do you use?
I do have a criteria for certain, like when I'm just on the hunt itself, like cover's got to be attached. I've got to have an attached cover. So, like I said, I'm starting down low, I mean, cover attached,
sure. And assuming you mean the book needs to be complete, not like pages missing that affect the story or something.
Yeah, it's got to be complete. I've got to have at least to be able to walk away with a book with some purpose, not just value, just some purpose. And then the money that you spend on it will add up to that later. But, I don't like to go too crazy. If the price is right, you can't refuse it. Like you were talking about with Edge of Spider-Verse 2. Sometimes you just do it because it makes sense. You know what I mean? But when I'm out on a hunt, for the most part, what I'm focusing on is just getting that book in any grade. I stay away from water damage because I stay away from any defects that will affect the book in the long term. So you're talking about affecting the credibility of the book. Rusty staples are a no-no because rust oxidization continues to happen over time, whether encapsulated or not. And you're talking about the integrity of the book. Eventually that cover is going to come off. So that's obviously a stay away from. So, but you could have water damage, no rust staples, but water damage even affects the brittleness of the page, how the page oxidizes with the air, staining, everything like that. There's way more to it than just a bit of water damage. So I like to think of stay away from the defects that have continuing long-term effects.
Right. Dog
ears in a bend, it is what it is. That's it. That's, unless you decide to fold that dog ear back up and put it in the book and then keep folding it out because you're having fun folding it, I don't know, and it eventually cracks off.
For me, like I've started to collect more Silver Age, which is what I'm most passionate about, and like bindings and those kind of things don't bother me on a Silver Age book. I don't get as concerned about those kinds of things, and creases that color break don't bother me as much when I'm talking about, you know, Avengers 7 or something. It's not. I'm not expecting the same I would from a, you know, Zatanna book or something from the modern age. So, Hudat, I wanted to talk. You missed last time when we were talking about how our lists evolve from when we first started collecting to now, like the ways in which we plan have changed. Is there any concrete ways you can think that your collecting and your planning has evolved?
I'm more focused now. Beforehand, I was basically like a shotgun shooting. I'm just getting whatever oh, that looks nice. I want that. Oh, that looks nice. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that, that storyline. Or I remember that character. I know that cover, because I remember a lot of covers. I'm like kind of a good memorization for his covers. And so like, that's how I was doing at first. But now I try to, at least down, especially if I'm going to a convention or a comic shop, is kind of harder because I don't have a lot of comic shops around me. I've been to I probably got about 6 total in an hour's drive all around. But I've been to them so many times I know what they have. So I was like, I don't need to bring my list to there. But when I go to a convention, I kind of have my list and see the things I'm looking for, or if it's a certain book I'm looking for, I try to stay focused on that, or stuff for my run. I try to keep my my list more organized than I was in the past, because I notice if I'm not organized, then I'm just spending money, and I'll be like, man, I can't believe I spent this much money on this, and I look on eBay now, it's it's a $10 book. So
see, that's the thing that can't be taught to you. You have to go on your own kind of journey as a comic collector. Like, we all do that thing where we come out of the gates as a first collectors, and we're like, is it a comic book? Yeah, I'll buy it. Is it a comic book? Yeah, I'll take it. You just take whatever, and your collection fills up. Next thing you know, you're overwhelmed with a bunch of books, and you start refining what you're going after. And I think that only comes with time. Nobody can teach you what it is, what you like. They recommend stuff, and you're like, yeah, that's cool. Like, I often know collectors who start out and they're just, what do you like? You're like, Scotty Young, Michael Turner, Jim Lee. It was like, yeah, those were clearly recommendations or something that have huge eye appeal and you're drawn to it. But next thing you know, you start, as time goes by and progresses, you learn about this book that you picked up in this certain artist, and you refine your collecting down even more and more and more and more. I mean, there was a point where I was buying everything. Then there was a point I was very firm, telling myself I'm not buying any more DC. And then focusing heavily on Jack Kirby, focusing on the artists I like, Wrights and Kaluta, Toth, stuff like that. And then even that was just kind of out of hand. So as a collector, as a comic book lover, I love everything. You give me some Charlton, give me some even Charlton reprints, give me whatever, it doesn't matter. I enjoy it. But as a collector, I got to be financially responsible. But you also have to, it's quantity over quality. And quantity is one of those terms that, it has a definition, but to you as a collector, quality, to me, might be the less of, like, I like New Warriors 80s, 90s run. I like Dark Hawk 90s run. Some people might argue with that. That's, but I think it's
you mentioned like the idea of collecting narrowing, like that your, when the peripheral vision starts to focus in a little bit on one sort of thing. Do you notice that sometimes though that I almost feel like that is like, it's almost like it's not in tunnel vision, but it's the idea that it sort of leads to other things. I almost feel like, people talk about, most people start modern and they work their way back, and before long they're in the golden age and they're collecting golden age books. There's this sort of expansion that happens to collecting where you're like, okay, I like this, now I like this, and now I like this, where it's almost like a path that you're traveling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much. Like, when you close one door, right, and you think it's going to be like more focusing, 2 windows open up, and so you're like, oh damn. And that's a good point that you brought up with a golden age collectors. They started out somewhere else, but golden age collectors, they refine to there. They know they're dealing with high dollar rarity, that's the thing that drives them, you know, not just the thrill of getting the books anymore. Now it's being very meticulous. You know, I like to think that golden age collectors are the serial killers of the comic book collecting world. You know, they're very particular in what they want and what they're going after, and so. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean just
they've
being
really
method.
zeroed in on something, right?
Yeah. But the main thing is that, and I've heard it from many collectors over the years, is that you have to collect what you love, and so just start with that. You know, you collect what you love, and today what you love you might not love tomorrow, but you got to be that collector to admit that to yourself. If not, you get overwhelmed with an amount of books.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Where did your collecting start? I know you've talked about TMNT. Where did your collecting begin?
Well, when I was growing up, I couldn't purchase. I really didn't purchase any comics. I used to go to the stores, read them, or we go to the mall, and it was, you know, I'd go into little shops or the bookstore and read. That's how I got into them. Never really collected them as a kid because I really couldn't afford them. I was an athlete, and we had priorities. You want to play sports, you get these sneakers, shorts, all the stuff you need. Oh, you want to get these comic books. You know, that takes the money away from the stuff that other thing I love doing. And plus, I grew like I was 5'10" at 12 years old. So, I couldn't. My parents were buying clothes and stuff, you know, for like
right.
And so it's like, you know, I can't. You know, even though comics weren't expensive, you think about them, look at the price tags now, you're like, oh, that's not expensive, but it really is when you add it up. You know, because if you really read a comic, it's not that many pages. It's not like you're reading a novel. No. That's why I like to get trades, a lot of stuff, especially stuff I like to read. I like to get trades. But what got me kind of like saying, all right, I want to get stuff that I remember as a kid growing up, besides the Ninja Turtles. Like, I remember Ninja Turtles growing up, cartoon, all that stuff. And then I found out it was a comic, and I was like, oh, I want to get the comic. And when I started reading the comic, I was like, I like the comic. So I was like, all right. And then you see the different realities in the movie. When I remember as a kid, then you look at the comic, you're like, wait, the Ninja Turtles shooting guns? like so all kinds of stuff. But this is a comic that this is the grade I'm happy with and I'm settled with, is the Giant Size X-Men 1. And this is the team I grew up with, you know, with the 90s cartoon.
I got to lock the camera on you just so I can stare in on this. Holy cow. There's no way I'm going to see a 9.2 in my house.
Don't ever say that. I'll tell you that. Don't ever say. I didn't start off with. I started off with a low grade, kept moving, and then I ended up with this one because I had a 9.0. I got graded myself. I think I had a 9.0. I got graded myself from CBCS. I was happy with that. Then I saw the price of the 9.0 and the 9.2 were the same, so I moved the 9.0. Yes, it was at a point they were that same price. So I got it with a guy who has tons of books, and he goes to conventions, everything. So I messaged him, hey, you have this book in a 9.2 or higher? He goes, yeah, I have a 9.2. You interested? I said, yes. And I said, put me on a little payment thing until I can move the other book. I didn't tell him so I would move the other book. So put me a little thing. So I ended up moving the other book, paid off this book. So I didn't have any money out of my pocket that I had to buy this book, but I worked my way up. Because I think the one I had before, I had a double signed 7.5, and I started off lower than that. Then I got 7.5. Then I got up to a 9, a raw copy, and then I got this one, and I'm happy with it. This is the cartoon. I remember, as a kid, I did not miss any episode of this cartoon. I remember actually certain episodes, like to the T. So it's like when I got this one, and even though I see it's like that Gen 2, it probably could be pressed, because the guy told me he probably could press it, and I'm like, nah, I'm good, I'm happy.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
Exactly.
So this one kind of started
square bound. You run the risk, right?
And this kind of started my craze of getting certain books or characters that mean a lot to me too. So once I got this one, I was like, all right, I want to focus on certain characters, find their first appearances or, significance in their character development that means a lot. So this kind of started the whole thing. And I can't remember when I got it from the guy, but, it's been a while because, the CGCs don't even use those labels anymore.
What about you, GPAP? Where did you start? Where was your collecting originating for you?
Well, Bill Bixby's Incredible Hulk show, watching that back in the day. So
I was
probably 2 or 3 years old. Watching that, running around pretending I'm the Hulk, and I liked, then at that age, I started drawing and stuff like that. So I got introduced to comic books pretty quickly. My mom, she worked at a department store that sold comic books, and so I got my first comic book in '83, and it was Justice League of America 200. I read the shit out of that book. I took it with me everywhere. I've got a couple of older videos on my channel where I talk about just little anecdotes about what I remember about that particular book, and I still have my GPAP pedigree. I still have my original collection of nasty ass books, and I remember being very rapidly drawn towards the differences between artists, and John Byrne was one of the first names that I knew. John Byrne, George Perez, and those were names that I could identify because for one, Byrne was everywhere. On the racks stands in Canada, in Newfoundland especially, wasn't hard to find Alpha Flight or Fantastic Four. But then, it was something that I used to share with my dad, and I used to share with my grandfather, and it was definitely wasn't a monetary thing, or was, I don't know how to say.
I can't imagine that it starts out monetary for anybody.
Yeah. Well, some people it does.
Yeah,
I've met some collectors, and they have no idea about what they're doing, and they hop in strictly because they see money being made and exchanged, and that's fine. Before, I used to have a chip on my shoulder about that approach to it, but teach their own. They're the ones who are going to buy the book that
part of it. You can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when there's money to be made, but I like the back in the day. For me, it was just the love of the art. That's what drew me to it, rather than the stories. It was the art of everything, and you go to a shop and you see Frank Miller's Wolverine #1 on the wall, and you're just enthralled by the cover. You're just like, or I remember my dream book for a long time when I was young was Black Panther #1, Jack Kirby, in the bright bold red.
Yeah, with
great
the
cover,
frog,
right?
With the crystal frog, and
and it was always kind of a pricey book, and I remember it being on my wall, and it was like $25-$30 at the time. This is probably about 86 and 87, and I had just gotten the Overstreet Price Guide from that year, and in that book that was my favorite section of getting Overstreet Price Guides, was the glossy colored photos, and you were like, oh, now those are the dream books, and sure enough, that's still something that stuck with me as a collector. I'll go and get a book, the first Boomerang or something like that, because I saw it in a price guide from 1988 or whatever, and but collecting for me started out definitely with the art.
We got Mr. Drew Manchu himself in here, blue eyes. What are you doing, brother? How's it going?
Man, I was getting out of work. I looked down at my phone. I'm like, oh, that's an alert. I'll look at that in a second. I get to Walmart, and I start watching the Comic Core. I start watching you guys talk about your lists. I'm like, shit, I don't want to go into Walmart now. I want to watch these guys talk about their lists. But needless to say, things needed to be purchased. Ran into Walmart, got home. As soon as I get home, I look down. You got a link in the chat. Say, hey, you want to come in? Come in. So here I am. I want to talk about my list.
Let's do it, brother. I'd love to hear from you. We only have a little bit of time before those story Comic Core suckers want to get in here. But when you think of your listing and how it's evolved or where it is now, what comes to mind for you?
All right. So there's a couple of things. Number one is my list is all out of whack. I'm completely overwhelmed my collection right now. I heard you guys talk about that a little bit. I've kind of reached the tipping point where I want to get rid of a lot of things. And I'm also reading a lot of books weekly, so I'm buying new books constantly. But I think my list is normally anything that really draws my eye. Right now, I'm hunting Crypto the Superdog covers, so I'm excited about those. Every time I see Crypto on the cover of a DC Family, those nice square-bound books, Those are things that
I remember those. Yeah, with the Supergirl and Superboy.
Right. But I got a new phone. And when I got a new phone, it was a situation with basically my CLZ app. No worky no more. There's a way to do the backup. I tried to run it. It didn't work. They said we could try something else. I didn't call back. And right now I'm kind of at a point where my organization's all over the place. So organization is number one when you're formulating your list. And I don't have that at all right now. So I think that for right now, I've really taken a step back. Unless I see something on the wall that just really pops for me. And I'm just picking up some crypto stuff, still hunting that Silver Age Marvel Cosmic, anything early Silver Surfer or Thor, that stuff I'm looking for. Any Captain Marvel issues that I see and I'm way higher grade than anything I got, I'm going to jump on that. But for the most part, I'm not really buying a whole lot of random books. I'll see, first appearance is so-and-so on the wall at the shop. I know I can get a reasonable deal on it. I know I can make money if I flip it. I'm just not about it because I don't know what I have right now and I don't know where I'm going. So unless it's something that's really in line with what I'm collecting right now, it's just kind of like a no-go.
Right. And the purge part of it is difficult as well. I mean, that in itself is a challenge. It took me about 2 years to get rid of all my DC, and some of them were just whatever, and some of them were pretty nice books. But I'm in a mode now this year, particularly, that I have been selling a lot of my doubles and things like that. But for every 10 books I sell, I find that I get 100 more, and I'm like, God, how does that happen? But it just comes your way as it's one thing when you're young and you get somebody gives you a box of comics, but when you're older, such as ourselves, everybody knows we collect comics. So like, yeah, I got some books, and next thing you know, this is why I have 40 copies of Wildcats #1 now. So
right. There's just so much. My life is pretty much 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag right now, and I just keep getting more and more comics, and like I've been doing really well selling things on the auctions, giving people in the community a great deal, getting more for them than I would on consignment at a shop, or if I took them to a shop and just sold them by the box. So I'm happy with spending, especially on modern books that I want to kind of call from my collection. I'm happy spending $4 and getting $1 an issue back. That's better than I could hope for in most situations. I read the books.
That thought came to me the other day when I was thinking maybe I'm not making my money back selling this run, but I enjoyed reading it. Somebody else is going to enjoy reading it. And if I get, like you're saying, 25% or 50% back on it, that's money towards the next run I'm going to read.
If I bring 40 long boxes to my local comic shop, what am I going to get? 13 cents an issue, maybe?
It's usually like 25% of the guide value they'll offer you, but they really won't take anything unless there's something in them in there for them. Some keys, some stuff.
It depends. There's always something. They're always getting it at a discount, so that when they sell you a 50-cent book, they're not losing money on that.
No.
Well, that's some people in the chat are shouting out this idea, like Chris Barrett saying you can and then obviously there's a joy in giving it to somebody in the community, and I think
definitely.
I found a lot of joy in that. Packaging out when my girls wanted to for Christmas send a bunch of things to families with kids. It was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's send some books out that we've already enjoyed, someone else can enjoy. And you're starting that purge, right? That clearing out of I'm gonna get more books this year. Where are they gonna go?
Right. And my work schedule. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I like to, around Christmas time, I always know somebody's kid who collects, and I do for them what I had done for me many times as a kid. And I'm sure you guys have too. Somebody always gives you that box. And now I basically grab a short box, or this year, my Dino Kid, my little buddy Dino Kid, I hooked him up basically with his first starter collection.
That's cool.
Right, and got him going, and now we're going to get into the next steps of picking up some bags and boards and taking care of that and treating it certain special. So, and then of course getting that Bible, getting that Overstreet price guy. But I think it's two years away from that. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let Alec get in and set up his thing. So I'm gonna wind us down here. I want to run through. Let everybody say if you had this one book to get off of your list, not that I'm gonna buy Action Comics and then flip it and buy all the books I want, but like what is the one book that's like number one on your list? And I'm gonna go to Who Dat first. What's your number one?
Well, since I already have my number one, I've been like, I don't know what else to get now. I'm not trying to be funny, like to mess you joke around. But my number one book was Ninja Turtles #1 first print. I've talked to a lot of guys already know that. So it's like now I'm just having fun, kind of like I'm having fun. Like I'm like, all right, so whatever I get the best deal, whatever I get the best thing.
Nice.
The one book I am after out of because I had like five books on the list: Ninja Turtles 1, Journey Mystery, and I had some other ones, but it's really Fantastic Four 1 is like the number one I would love to get before the end of the year because it's only going to keep going up, and then I'm not going to be able to get it at all. So
I feel that way about Fantastic Four 5.
That one is going even higher, but it's like I had one of those books, and I regret selling it, even though I got above fair market value at the time. Right. But it's that's why I'm like I want to get what started it all, because I wouldn't be enjoying my because look at was it Eastman and Lear, they tribute to Jack Kirby and all that stuff in their Ninja Turtles 1, and that might have not made it here without a Fantastic Four 1.
Sure, absolutely.
So that kind of like have that one that kind of started it all, and then the one that means a lot to me. That's kind of like I'm looking at. Then after I get those two, I have no idea, but I have ideas. But I really want a Fantastic Four 1. If I can get the best deal, everybody wants above what it's selling for right now.
Yeah.
But that's the number one. That's the number one I have right now that I want to get before Marvel or Disney says, "Hey,
awesome.
Let's do a Fantastic Four movie."
What about you, GPAP? What's the one book for you?
Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos #1. I've been after that book forever. It just needs to stop. This shit needs to stop. I need to get it. It's one of those things you just got to bite the bullet, and make some sacrifices. First, you look and you see if you can make it happen. And sometimes you can't always make it happen, but you can, but you take sacrifice. So you come to that point, that horizon point, that event horizon, where you're like, I've got to shit or get off the pot. I've got to do the right thing or do what I need to do to get this book. So, it's that one. And then I just want to touch on something that Russ said too, is that when you get your Grail, there's this weird effect that happens, that there's a discussion that needs to be had. That's a show idea or something, but you end up kind of losing your mind because you lose your sense of direction. Then you have this focal point, these people who've hunted the Holy Grail, when they find their Holy Grail, like, what do we do now? We disband? What do we do? So I remember being gifted my Grail, which was Strange Tales 89, First Fin Fang Foom, and I kind of lost my mind. I was like collecting garbage for a full year. I didn't know where I belonged and what I was as a collector. It all went out the window. Nothing had value anymore. I didn't know what I was doing, and I had to regroup and kind of get your bearings again. So that's easy to do too when you lose your stepping, when you do get that Grail. But for me, Sergeant Fury, Howling Commandos #1, and then I've got a backup, which is my X-Men #4. Get that out of the way. Yeah.
And now, Drew, what about you? What's the one for you?
Well, I tell you what, I have no idea what the hell he was just talking about, because I don't have any of my Grails. I've got a lot of really good books. I got a lot of books that I love. But as far as Grails, Giant Size X-Men #1, that is on the list. I got to make it happen sooner rather than later. That might have to happen at Baltimore. See if I can't find one in good enough shape with the price that it works for me. X-Men #1, also another Grail for me there. And right now with the crypto thing, I'm on Adventures 210. If I can find a nice copy of Adventures 210, that would really be something that I would love. Beyond that, no Grails for me yet. I'm still hunting for those three, and and everything else, just, something Silver Age Marvel comes up. I don't have it. It's in good shape. I'm buying it. There you go.
Smart man. That's always a smart bet. I made a little purchase this weekend in one of the auctions from Caleb the Comic Smurf and got a few of early Avengers. I'm looking forward to seeing how nice they look. Thanks everybody in the chat for coming and joining us for this show. I'm sorry it came off at a slightly different time and that we're interrupting the Story Comic Core, although I'm not super sorry to Alec. But thanks to
watch out for the Underwhaler.
Yeah, the Underwhaler. He's gonna get you. But you know what? I'm on his side. We're going to this comic. 90 miles from comics is going down. He's going down. Thanks. Hudak Comics and Movies for coming. Thank you, GPAB and Drew, for jumping in here and joining us impromptu style.
It was fun. Thanks.
It was fun. I had a good time.
Yeah, thanks for the link. I wasn't doing anything else. Hanging out at Walmart.
So this show, The List, is irregular in time. It's going to be every couple of weeks more like. But hopefully you guys will come around and enjoy it when we put it on. And stick around because the Story Comic Core is going to be on very soon. Have a nice night.